Hello, my name is Hayley Yow. This presentation is over the emotional development in infants and toddlers. This is for the course COUN 2023 for Human Development with Dr. Christina McIntyre. So to kind of kick us off, we'll start talking about the overview of what we're going to be touching on. So we'll touch on the basic emotions and how they come about in infants and toddlers, the cultures of which infants and toddlers are raised, and how they kind of differentiate on how emotions start to come about in them. And then we'll talk about the emotional responses that babies learn with other people. So with the basic emotions, we kind of all know that they are very important, maybe even more important than words to help us communicate with others. Emotions are extremely important for us to kind of know what baby is feeling and for baby to know how their caregivers are feeling and what they're wanting them to do. With infants just being born, they have two different arousal states, really. That's attraction to pleasant stimulation and withdrawal to unpleasant stimulation. So with attraction, they're going to be more relaxed and kind of soothed. And then with withdrawal, they'll be kind of more distressed, crying, and upset. With happiness, it's more first expressed in smiles and then laughter, which actually appears around 3 to 4 months and reflects faster processing of happiness in the brain. Whenever new skills are achieved, the baby will tend to be happy about it, kind of show smiling, laughter, cooing, and excitement. And then whenever the parent copies these emotions, it kind of harbors a safe haven for the infants to grow in their motor, cognitive, and social abilities, and really just helps them flourish. Moving on to anger. As infants get older, their anger typically tends to grow with them. So older infants can get angry about having a toy removed, naps, anything like that. This is because as they're getting older, they're also learning intentional behavior. So they want to make their own actions that come with their own effects. And with us having to inhibit some of those, it can tend to make baby angry and kind of upset their situation that they're trying to do. With sadness, an infant typically starts to exhibit sadness when they're away from their caregiver for a long period of time or whenever play is disrupted. It kind of confuses the baby and starts to sadden them because they're not really sure exactly what is going on. With fear, a perfect example would be stranger anxiety. So that could be a new toy and not knowing if it's okay, kind of wait for the go-ahead from the parent, but more or less unfamiliar faces. So whenever a stranger picks up a baby, they'll typically act more afraid and standoffish rather than with their personal caregiver. Fear can also keep babies from doing things and exploring things that they shouldn't. We'll go ahead and move on to our emotional response. So with emotional response, over time, babies learn how to respond to their caregiver's emotions. In the beginning, they'll learn voice-to-face recognition or face-to-voice recognition, which would be happy face, happy voice. They'll typically tend to pay more attention to that rather than happy face with angry voice. Babies begin to learn that emotions have meaning, and they start to engage in social referencing. Toddlers tend to use emotional signals to guide their actions and gather information about others. So if they're playing with the plug socket and mommy says no and kind of gets a little bit upset about it, they kind of learn that this is not okay and I should not do it. With the culture and emotions, culture plays a huge role in emotions and how they develop in children all over the world. So, for example, NSO parents typically discourage emotions of all kinds. So, anger, happiness, sadness, and fear are all discouraged, kind of to just keep a calmed and soothed baby. Although, in difference, within the Western Middle SES, caregivers tend to promote self-expression, which makes their children typically develop emotionally much quicker than the NSO children. Culture is extremely valued all over the world, and children are raised differently according to their own culture. This could typically mean that if an NSO child were brought into the Western portions of the world, they would seem like they were falling behind a bit, but within their own culture, they would actually be thriving. So, to kind of just close us off, I want to say thank you for listening to me talk about and kind of teach about the different emotions and how they come about in infants and toddlers. To kind of reiterate, emotions are huge aspects of everyone's lives, and they're most importantly developed and learned at a young age. So, parents constantly showing happiness and love and all of the good emotions will typically go for a better emotional development in their children rather than constant scolding and sadness, which will typically harbor a more sadder and dangerous relationship from caregiver to child. I just want to say thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation.